Terrell Odom. I'm the Associate Director in the Office for Military Affiliated Programs within the Office of the Provost. And I want to thank you all for coming out to this event today. Luckily, my speaking portion of this event is very minimal today. So my job is to introduce you guys to our Master of Ceremony. When I got to the university, I met this gentleman over in SSA, School of Social Service Administration, and to hear the wealth of knowledge that he has that pertains to veterans, student veterans, health and wellness for veterans, and everything else about veterans and military affiliated persons just had me in complete awe. So Dr. Stanley Mccracken is a lecturer in the University of Chicago School of Social Service Administration. He has 40 years experience as a clinician, educator, and consultant. He has written about psychiatric rehabilitation, addiction, behavioral pharmacology, behavioral medicine, aging, motivational interviewing, evidence-based practice, and staff training. His practice interests include mental health, drug and medical problems, aging, addressing cross-cultural spirituality and direct practice, and veterans issues. He served in the U.S. Army from 1969 through 1974 as a Vietnamese linguist and legal clerk. He has worked with a number of veterans programs, including the VA, the Vet Center, Rush University's Road Home Program, Urban Warriors, and Lake County Veterans and Family Services Foundation. He is a lay service leader for the Unitarian Universalist Military Ministry at Great Lakes Naval Training Center. So I ask that we put our hands together for our master ceremony today, Dr. Stanley Mccracken.
Thank you very much, Terrell. I appreciate that warm introduction. And by the way, I've been asked to mention, I noticed we have some Marines and like Rangers and Airborne and stuff. Those little sticks, eating those is optional. I've been asked to mention that, so before I get started. So, good afternoon. My name is Stanley Mccracken, and I'm a faculty member at the School of Social Service Administration. Very pleased to serve as Master of Ceremony today. We placed index cards at the tables, and we invite you to use them for the wall of remembrance over here. Please use the red, white, and blue cards to record a family member or friend's name in remembrance. At this time, I would like you to please rise as you are able, and for the presentation of colors by the University of Chicago ROTC and the singing of the National Anthem by Kennedy Rush.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
Thank you, and please be seated. As you entered the hall this afternoon, you may have noticed a small table set for one, which is designated to honor those service members who are missing in action or prisoners of war. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intention to respond to the country's call to arms. The single red rose in a vase reminds us of the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keep the faith awaiting their return. The yellow ribbon tied on the vase is reminiscent of the yellow ribbons worn in the lapel of those who bear witness to their unyielding determination and to demand a proper accounting of our missing. The candle will be lit, symbolizing the upward reach of their unconquerable spirit. A slice of lemon is on the bread plate to remind us of their bitter fate. There's salt on the bread plate, symbolic of the family's tears as they wait. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us this afternoon. The chair is empty. They are not here. All of you who served with them and called them comrades, who depended upon their might and aid and relied upon them, for surely they have not forsaken you. Let us pause in remembrance. Until the day they come home, remember. I would now like to introduce a member of our military-affiliated community and university leadership, Ivan Samstein. Ivan serves as the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the university and is a veteran of the United States Army. Ivan oversees the university's financial operations, including internal audit and compliance, risk management, technology services, human resources, and shared services. Prior to coming to the University of Chicago, Ivan served as Chief Financial Officer for Cook County from 2012 to 2016, overseeing 8 departments, and was primary fiscal advisor to the Cook County Board President. He previously served as an investment banker covering municipal fixed income markets in both New York and Chicago, in the Public Finance Department at the Bank of America Merrill Lynch from 2004 to 2011. He served more than 10 years in the Army between active and reserve status, deploying to Afghanistan, and is a recipient of the Combat Action Badge and Bronze Star. Please join me in welcoming Ivan Samstein.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. So I want to start by welcoming all the veterans who are here today, university community leaders, and others in attendance and guests who've come to attend today's ceremony. I specifically want to note John Schwan, who's the co-founder of the Alan J. Lynch Foundation and a board member of the Pritzker Military Museum, and also a Purple Heart recipient. He's also a United States Army veteran, much like myself. Roger Mackett is a brigadier general retired from the U.S. Marine Corps, I believe is also in attendance. John Glotzbach, the treasurer of the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation, and Robert Gorman, who's a World War II veteran in the United States Army as well. So I will note that today's ceremony is in reference to Memorial Day. You know, often in public discourse, Memorial Day and Veterans Day are conflated, but for those of us who have served in the military, we certainly appreciate the difference between the two, that Memorial Day is an event to remember those who've paid the ultimate sacrifice while serving the United States Armed Forces, which is obviously a different event and occasion than Veterans Day. So I just point that out because I think, I probably speak for anyone who served in the military that it's this uncomfortable moment where someone sort of wishes you a happy Memorial Day, and it's really not something that you really think of in that way. I think all of us who have served in a combat theater know some people that we were close to that did not return, and that's what we're really here to talk about. So I want to thank the Office of the Provost, the Office of Military Affiliated Communities, and International House itself for hosting the event today. And I also want to take a moment before I introduce today's speaker to talk about some of the initiatives that are going on at the university. I think the university, clearly, if you look at the last couple of years, there's been a number of initiatives, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But the fundamental common theme is to recognize the valuable perspectives and the skills that military-affiliated communities bring to the university, and just as importantly, to honor the service and sacrifice of veterans and their families. And I certainly appreciate that in my own interview process, there was certainly a recognition of some of the things that I brought to the table as someone who'd served in uniform. So it's important that we recognize and support those who've worn the uniform for our country, and the occasion of Memorial Day certainly reinforces us as we think about that, even though, again, it's a separate occasion. So I'll summarize some of those recent accomplishments because I think they're really important to recognize it. I think they've really positioned the University of Chicago as a leader amongst our peers as the way we think about this, and we hope that we'll continue to have an impact that will down to our peer institutions as well. So, earlier this academic year in November, the university established the Office for Military Affiliated Communities. So the office is there to coordinate efforts to support all university veterans, students, staff, faculty, alumni, you name it, their families, and those who are military affiliated. And so this office, sometimes called OMAC, assists in the recruitment and support of veterans to the university for both employment and to study here. Only recently in February hired its first leader, Terrell Odom, who you saw a moment ago, who's a Navy veteran, and he joined in February to lead the OMAC, as we call it. So, and under Terrell's leadership, the university has reestablished a chapter of Student Veterans of America. We had not had one for some time. It's an organization, for those who are not familiar, that includes student veterans from across disciplines and provides opportunities for engagement with other SVA or Student Veterans of America chapters across the country. The University of Chicago recently founded the Ivy Plus Veteran and Military Affiliated Group. I think many of us know that elite academic institutions have not always been the most welcoming institutions for service members, and so I think it's particularly notable that the university is taking that role, sort of founding that group for our peers, and it includes professional staff from the larger Ivy Plus group, and in fact, the first meeting of that group will be here on our campus in this coming fall. The undergraduate college will be welcoming a 12-student veterans program this fall. It's from all services, so it's not just Army, and that's okay. And it's part of the what we call the Posse Foundation Veterans Program, for those who are not familiar. And the students there will receive training prior to arriving, a number of services and mentoring while they're enrolled at the school, and supplemental funding as well to cover their full cost of tuition. And we've only recently hired Bo Butts as an Army veteran who's been hired to serve as the mentor to this posse. So our student veterans and many civilian students at the university continue to be engaged and try to create this supportive and inclusive community for military-affiliated persons on campus. And there's a whole host of student activities. I had the fortune of attending the Booth School's dining out earlier this year, which is a good time for myself. Kind of brought me back a little bit. But there's a whole host. There's the Booth School Business Armed Forces Group, so that I just alluded to. U Chicago Student Veterans of America chapter. Thank You for Your Service podcast, which is run by student veterans at the Harris School of Public Policy. Law school veterans, the Undergraduate Maroon Veterans Alliance, the Army ROTC, and the Military Affinity Group within Alumni Relations, amongst others. So I think there's a lot of efforts, and I for those of us who don't see them every day, I think they're important to acknowledge, and I think certainly you can see sort of a trajectory just even in the last academic year of efforts that we're trying to undertake. And so I'll now turn a little bit to today's program, the reason I'm up here, which is introduce today's speaker. So we're fortunate to have the Honorable Patrick Murphy, who was the 32nd Undersecretary of the Army, a former U.S. Congressman for the 8th Congressional District of Pennsylvania, is our keynote speaker today. Congressman graduated from Airborne Air Assault for the United States Army, served 2 deployments, first to Bosnia in 2002. For those who don't know, the U.S. forces there, part of a multinational coalition that really ended the worst ethnic cleansing in Europe since World War II. And then in 2003, he deployed with the 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper in Baghdad, Iraq, where he earned a Bronze Star for his service. So. The congressman oversaw the justice system for 1.5 million Iraqis in Baghdad, prosecuting 2 high-level terrorists in Iraq's highest court. And in 2007, and this was an interesting fact that I did not know, the congressman was the nation's first Iraq war veteran elected to Congress. So in his role as congressman, I'll just make a side note that for those of us who've served in Afghanistan for many years, we didn't even, I don't think many of our fellow citizens recognize there were actually 2 conflicts that were quite different in Iraq and Afghanistan. And there have since been Afghanistan veterans, one whom I know quite well, actually 2 who I know quite well, who've been elected to Congress and the Senate. So, but the congressman was the first from either conflict, as I understand it. So in his role as congressman, he co-authored the 21st Century GI Bill, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Hiring Our Heroes Act, and raising the federal minimum wage. The congressman was appointed to the National U.S. Cyberspace Solarium Commission. He was a distinguished chair of innovation at West Point, where he now supports fellow veterans entering political public service through Kennedy Democrats and taking the Hill. In 2016, the congressman was appointed by President Obama as the 32nd Undersecretary of the Army, and he expanded the Soldier for Life initiative, achieving recruitment goals for the Army for the first time in 5 years. Not easy as the economy continues to expand. And he generated over $250 million in public-private partnerships. Congressman Murphy has also founded PJM Productions, a company that specializes in military veteran content. He's co-founded WorkMerc, a business-to-business tech company focused on employee engagement and wearable technology. So with that, I ask you to please join me in welcoming the Honorable Patrick Murphy.
Ivan, thank you very much. I tried to say that, to keep it short, to say I'm a Libra and an Iraq veteran, but thank you. I'm a Libra. Let me just begin by just saying, Kennedy Rush, you were amazing. Thank you so much. She spoke earlier. She's going to speak in a little bit, doing God Bless America. I lost my voice yesterday. I gave the commencement address at Widener University. So I'm now going to say that I gave her my voice. So usually I'm much more angelic, like she is, which is, I'm a former politician. I still have some bad habits. I know I haven't said this already, but Terrell Odom, let me just say, Terrell, who is obviously the Associate Director for this new office, granted, he's a Navy veteran because he couldn't get into the Army, but a Navy corpsman, but honestly, he does a phenomenal job, and we couldn't be more proud of him and his work with transitioning veterans coming out. It is critically important. Ivan mentioned the new chapter of Student Veterans of America. That's huge for you, Chicago, and let me just say why real quick, and all those initiatives with Booth and the law school and Harris, et cetera. I taught here 5 years ago. When I was going through faculty orientation, I just left Congress. The new Institute of Politics was standing up. David Axelrod was a close friend. He asked me to serve. And when I was going through faculty orientation, I was going through my buddy, I had my own TV show with MSNBC and NBC News, was Steve Schmidt. Steve Schmidt married a Navy veteran. And so we're going through faculty orientation, and we said, well, where's the ROTC building? I'd like to stop by and say hello. Like, we haven't had an ROTC here on campus since World War I. And I was like, really? And we just put a couple bugs in the ear, and it was really a student initiative. And to see it grow within 5 years to where it is today, it's been amazing. And with Student Veterans of America, people don't understand, every year we have about 250,000 troops that become veterans that transition out every year. And of those 250,000, half of them go into higher education, to places like Chicago. And those student veterans, there's about 1.1 on the GI Bill right now in colleges across America. They have a higher GPA than civilian counterparts, and they're more likely to major in STEM. It's not the soft skills, so something that we're very, very proud of. I apologize, hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm gonna keep trying to make sure I talk into the mic. Is Ryan Shannon here by chance? Ryan, let me just say, if you don't know about Ryan Shannon's story, I can't wait to have a couple words with you. Ryan Shannon was a collegiate track and field star. And he, unfortunately, had a close friend, a buddy of his, who gave his life saving his girlfriend's life. He gave his life to a shooter up in northern Illinois, but it propelled Ryan to go join our Navy. And he served with distinction and is a really role model for not just sailors across America, but also for soldiers, and Marines, and airmen. Ryan, it's great to be with you. Thank you for being here today. And I do also want to just say again, Stan, I know you already spoke, but thanks for your service and for being here. It is critically important. And I can't not recognize my good buddy, Mick Yeager, who's here. Mick, it's great to be with you, brother. He's a Teamster. He is Chicago through and through. The only reason why Mick likes me, because there's, the Phillies and Cubs are battling right now. You guys won last night, unfortunately, but we got you the night before. But my best friend in the Army was a guy, Ryan McCarthy. We were battle buddies during advanced camp. We were both ROTC students. When I was a congressman, he worked for Secretary Gates in the Pentagon, and in the Bush administration, he stayed on for the Obama administration. But he used to talk about Chicago all the time, and I'm a Philly kid, and we used to go back and forth. I told him that Buddy Ryan had his best careers not with the '85 Bears, but as the coach of the Eagles and all this other stuff. My point, though, is this, is that Ryan McCarthy is now the Undersecretary of the Army, which is the COO of the Army. He's Army Ranger, just phenomenal leader, and is really changing a lot of great things in the Pentagon. And I say that because I was in that role prior, but to be bunkmates with this guy in the 90s, and then over 20 years later to see him do phenomenal. I know Mick and his team were good friends with Ryan too, and I wish him the best. I know there's a lot of Army brothers and sisters that are here too, so thank you for being here. I thought Ivan did a good job in talking about what Memorial Day is, and it is to honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. And there are hundreds of thousands of Americans that have given the ultimate sacrifice decade after decade. But to have World War II generation heroes here like Robert and Mrs. Gorman. Robert, thank you so very much. Robert, thank you for being here. Robert, thank you for being here, and for your wife being here as well. Mr. Gorman, I have to tell you, one of my favorite movies is Saving Private Ryan. And one of my favorite scenes of all time is when the grandfather, which was Matt Damon's character, goes to the cemetery and he asks his grandkids if he earned it, and instructs them that they have to earn it. And that generation has been called the greatest generation, and I agree with that. But it is up to all of us in this room to make sure that all of us who love our country, whether we serve the uniform or not, we all serve in our own way, we all should be engaged citizens. But we have the mantle of citizenship in the greatest country in the world. And we are a great country because we're a good country. But we only remain great if we continue to be good and continue to earn it every single day by voting, no matter what your political persuasion is, by being engaged citizens and giving back and making this country better than how we found it. But he really led the way. And I know we have Korean War veterans and Vietnam veterans that are here. I will say, as far as the Vietnam generation, we all know, again, we're honoring those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. We're also taking a step back to say, what did they give the ultimate sacrifice for? And it's the idea that, the blueprint of our country is our Constitution. A Constitution that every soldier takes an oath to support and defend. A Constitution that lays out certain fundamental principles like freedom and liberty interest and equality and separation of powers and checks and balances. I used to, when I taught at West Point, one of my former students is here 20 years later. He was doing running a great nonprofit here in Chicago. I used to say, it's like rocks, paper, scissors. You have executive, legislative, judicial. One's not more powerful than the other, okay? And it's these checks and balances, and there's tension. I know there's tons of tension right now in Washington. We don't need to touch that at all. But I will tell you, those checks and balances, that blueprint of our country, the Vietnam generation, when they came home, the American people didn't recognize that it's the political leadership that sends our men and women into harm's way. It's not the military. We just go execute the orders of our civilian leaders of our nation. And the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of Vietnam veterans, the millions, over 6 million that served in Vietnam. During that era, when they came home, the country did not separate the warrior from the war. And many of them, as you know, were not treated appropriately. That generation, more than any other, has bent over backwards for my generation of Iraq, Afghanistan veterans to say, welcome home, brother, and welcome home, sister. And we are so grateful, so thank you. So I want to leave you with two things, because I want to highlight what Ivan had mentioned already, but two other things I want to mention, which I think is critically important. These young men and women that join our nation, that wear the cloth of our country, they are civic assets to this nation. They are leaders of character that want to continue to serve, that have this commitment to serve. And many of them do that. And they're civic assets because they become little league coaches and pastors in our churches. They start small businesses. Veterans are actually more likely to start a small business for that small business to be successful. They're more likely to be C-suite executives of Fortune 500 companies. Largest healthcare company in the world is Johnson & Johnson. It's run by an Army veteran, Alex Gorski, Army Ranger. But these veterans, when they come home, whether it was from World War II or Vietnam, they create small businesses that become gigantic global corporate icons. You know, things like the largest sports apparel company in the world is Nike, started by two Army veterans, Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight. People don't know Phil Knight. He just beside Michael Jordan. Yeah, Phil Knight. They started Nike in the back of the pickup, the car, in the trunk of a car. Bill Bowerman got the Silver Star with the 10th Mountain Division. Was Phil Knight's track coach at the University of Oregon. Comcast. It's the largest media company in the world. They own NBC. They own Universal Pictures, etc. Comcast was started by Navy veteran after World War II, Ralph Roberts. You look at FedEx. Vietnam generation. Fred Smith comes back, Marine. Again, another guy who couldn't get into the Army. But he came back and started FedEx. Here in Chicago, Edelman Public Relations, they're one of the biggest global corporate brands of PR. Mr. Edelman was a World War II veteran, comes back. I don't know if any of them are here, but we have a lot to be proud of in the Chicago region. We have a lot to be proud of these young Americans. I do say, though, that I do have some concerns. I will say that when I look at the next generation of veteranpreneurs, of those 16 million veterans from World War II that came back, half of them started doing small business and created Nike and Johnson & Johnson and Comcast, et cetera. But now it's less than 5%. So it went from 50% of our generation of Iraq, Afghanistan veterans, only 5% will start their own small business. And when we talk about why veterans do it, it's because they're risk takers, because they're willing to put online, it will work their tails off. So I look at veteranpreneur stuff. I'm sure there's stuff that we could do with Booth moving forward. I would love to partner with all of you on what you're probably already doing, how we could take it further. But there is a great organization in Chicago. It's called Bunker Labs. It's a nonprofit that helps veteranpreneurs start their own small business. They're in 31 cities, but it started here in Chicago. And you have a great, rich history and tradition here that hopefully sometimes it takes someone from the outside, like a kid from Philadelphia, to come here and tell you, hey, you should be very proud. There's a lot more work we could be doing. So I wanted to mention the veteranpreneur stuff. I also do want to mention, though, the warrior class in America has become a different class, and I don't mean it in a disparaging way, but we're right now in the longest wars in American history. So when we do go to bed tonight, there'll be 190,000 troops in over 170 foreign countries. We're doing offensive operations right now in 13 countries. Most Americans don't know that. Most Americans, they care about the military, but they don't encourage their sons and daughters to join the military. It's for someone else's sons and daughters most of the time. And when you have the longest wars in American history, and it's less than 1% that are serving, and these less than 1% are going on 7 to 10 to 12 deployments. Now, the majority of the veterans coming in right now are from military families. And we're leaning on those military families, but if you ask those military families right now, more than half of them will not even encourage your own sons and daughters to go in the military. It's not because they're not proud of their service. It's not because they're not appreciative. But they worry. Because political leaders in Washington, if you ask most of them how many countries do offensive operations, they probably don't know the number 13. If you ask them how many troops are deployed to foreign countries, they probably don't know 190,000. I served with them, I was there. And again, I'm not trying to, I love my country, but we have to demand more from our nation. Only 29% of young Americans could even join the military because of the obesity crisis in America. And I will tell you, I know I served with Rahm Emanuel in the House of Representatives. I know some people love him, some people do not like him. I know he's not the mayor anymore. He did a lot to make sure JROTC students, the largest JROTC program in high schools, these are inner city kids that do it, largest JROTC program in the country is Chicago. And I think Mayor Emanuel did it, like tripled it. And it wasn't because he was trying to force, he's not a military veteran, he wasn't trying to force all these kids to go to West Point, Naval Academy, or colleges, but he was trying to give them a chance. People forget the largest college scholarship program in America is through ROTC, not through the academies. We have about 1,000 graduates a year. I'll be there on Saturday because I teach at West Point, and it's great. I'll be so proud of 900 and change West Point graduates, but there'll be 5,600 graduates on the other colleges and universities, including here at UChicago. And so I would ask you all to please, today at some point, take out your cameras, as I'd be now, because I have a face for radio, not for TV anymore. But take your pictures, take a picture of this luncheon, put it on your Facebook account or Twitter or Instagram, etc. Why is that? Because 90% of the news that young Americans get come from social media. They're not watching NBC News and they're not watching television. They're getting it from social media. But hey, with this great Memorial Day luncheon, military appreciation luncheon, and I learned about the great opportunities that the military is, whether you served or not, and just share it. And if they ask you about it, tell them about the great things it is. Tell them about, wow, did you know like the most biggest companies in the world were started by veterans coming back, and you're more likely to start a small business for this business to be successful, XYZ. We should have a sense of pride. I do want to say in conclusion, because I don't want to ruin dessert or anything. There is an ethic that we do lose a lot of troops overseas in combat, and I don't want to, and they do pay the ultimate sacrifice. And as a net, the military is a very positive source of good, not just for individual Americans, but also for a nation as a whole. When you talk about democratizing education after World War II, the GI Bill, when you talk about desegregating the military, when half our country was still segregated, with black water fountains and white water fountains in restaurants and bathrooms. When the military led the way, they repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then that ushered in marriage equality in America. Very positive. But on the flip side, we have an ethic that we leave no one behind. That's why we did the great thing about when you walked in with the POW MIA table, and I appreciated that. But a lot of these veterans that come back, some do fall through the cracks. And we do have an ethic to do more, that no one falls behind. And every day, we have about 22 veterans and active troops who take their own life. There's more that we could do at UChicago on that. You have one of the best psychology programs in the country. I'm partnering with Congressman Patrick Kennedy on this new endeavor for free online education for everyday Americans, 2 to 3 minute videos. We have over 100, it's called psychhub.com. Why am I doing that? Because we all have a duty and a role to play to make it better, to reach out, to use technology, to use education, to let people know some evidence-based practices, to let them know that they're not alone, to let them know that we care about them, that we love them, that we will leave no one behind. We just can't look the other way. It's the same thing with the opioid crisis. Over 100 every day are killed. A lot of veterans who suffer from long-term pain, whether it's fellow paratroopers from jumping out of an airplane or et cetera. And they get on OxyContin, and it gets worse. And there's more work we could do as a nation. And we can't look at the 1%, ask them to serve in the wars, the longest wars in American history, 18 years this September, and come home and expect them to solve all the problems either. We all have to be a citizen, an engaged, passionate American citizen, to do what's necessary to encourage 99% be part of the solution. So on this Memorial Day, when we're blessed to be here at one of the greatest institutions in America, we have to ask ourselves, did we earn it? God bless you, and thank you so very much.
Thank you. The history of the military challenge coins are widely debated, and their origin is rooted in the history of civilizations from the Romans to the American colonials. But there's no doubt that the military challenge coins are a big part of military culture, and there's increasingly so in the civilian world. Challenge coins are a great way to boost morale, identify allegiance, and are a terrific way to extend one's appreciation by saying thank you with a coin in hand and a firm handshake. The University of Chicago says thank you to the Honorable Patrick Murphy. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, it gives me particular pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Akaya Gossett is one of my students in the School of Social Work across the street. And for those of you who are not familiar, it's the Mies van der Rohe building. And I don't know if you know the history of Mies van der Rohe buildings, but periodically the windows fall out. And so recently we had those firmed up. So if you'd like to take a look, I can assure you that you can do so safely. But I would like to introduce Akaya Gossett, a second-year graduate student at SSA and a veteran of the United States Army. Akaya is part of the University of Chicago's 12-month advanced program in social work. Upon completion of her program at U Chicago, she intends to enter the field of social work as a clinician, assisting marginalized populations and training others on psychoeducation courses. Akaya.
Oh, wow. It's a lot of y'all. Okay. My name is Akaya Gossett, and as a young girl who grew up on the south side of Chicago, I not only witnessed, but I lived domestic violence, poverty, gun violence, trauma, and multiple other things. It is through this experience that I decided to join the military when I was 19 as a single mother of one child because I decided to do something different. When I joined the Army after completing basic training in AIT, I was introduced to a 15-month deployment. Imagine how much that scared me. During my deployment, I lost 2 friends to a VBID explosion and also 1 friend to suicide. It was through their deaths and my personal experiences that I decided to pursue social work as a career, to impact those who had experienced as much trauma as I did. When I got out of the military, I returned here as a veteran, homeless, and a single mother of 2 children. I decided to go to school, so through the VA services at my undergraduate of Governor State University in Harold, Washington, I retained all of my benefits and graduated with my bachelor's degree last year in 2018. Thank you. Through the advice of a friend who recommended SSA and U Chicago as a school to pursue my master's degree, I enrolled, very interested in clinical interventions within the educational space and military culture. Since I've been at SSA, I have been connected with Terrell Odom in the OMAC office, which I have been so grateful for, because as a veteran here, I felt like I was confined to a bubble, that there was not a lot of people who could relate to my history of homelessness, my history of trauma, my history as a veteran, and I felt very isolated and alone. So having this office with Terrell and connecting with him was one of the best experiences of my time here at UChicago and at SSA in general. During our time, we were able to attend the Ivy League Veterans Council. And at the Ivy League Veterans Council, we were able to talk about some policy interventions that we think could better impact and progress those veterans that are slipping through the crack, as discussed earlier. And so we also talked about what it looks like for veterans in higher ed spaces to actually be able to pursue institutions such as this, because we know graduate school in general is very expensive, but it's very expensive here too. So it was through the Ivy League Veterans Council that we were able to kind of come up with some solutions about how to move forward. How can we continue to help veterans that are here? Also, during this time that I was here, I also came into some financial hardships, and it was through Terrell that he connected me with First Sergeant Magnum from Lynch Foundation, which I think he is here. Are you here, First Sergeant Magnum? Stand up. That's you. First Sergeant Leon Magnum is the head of the A.J. Lynch Foundation. If you don't know about the A.J. Lynch Foundation, it is a foundation that helps veterans who are experiencing financial and basic needs help. It is through their organization that I was able to retain financial support for providing groceries for me and my children while I was here at graduate school. I don't consider myself a savior veteran or someone who has completed or did anything amazing, because I feel like I have so much more work to do. I have so many veteran brothers and sisters that I still want to help, that still need my help. So my journey isn't completed, but I also feel like there are a lot of veterans that we're honoring today that can't be where I am. And so that's why events like this are extremely important, because we don't want to forget them. We have to make sure that their legacy stays alive. So I just want to share with everyone that if you have someone who is still here, and even for those that we have lost, to make sure that you are doing your absolute best. As a collective, we all are, myself included, are doing our absolute best to ensure that their legacy stays alive and that we are remembering them in everything that they have sacrificed for all of us to be here. So in closing, I want to recognize and give special thanks to, of course, our keynote speaker, Patrick Murphy. Thank you so much for being here. Our wonderful MC, Dr. Stanley Mccracken. The University of Chicago's Provost's office. The Equal Opportunity Programs Office, especially Dr. Bridget Collier, Scott Velasquez, and Mitchell Kitloss. I always say his name wrong. I'm so sorry. The man of the hour, he doesn't like to say that, but that's his name, Dr. Terrell Odom of the OMAC office. And last but not least, can we please give a round of applause for Dr. Denise Jorgens and Deb Jasinski, I'm sorry if I butchered that, and Alexandra Erickson from the International House. Thank you all so much for being here, and if you have any questions or want to talk, I'm around.
Wow. Wow. Thank you all for attending today's event. Thank you to all of the veterans and those who have sacrificed for our freedoms. And by the way, I want to honor someone we haven't mentioned yet. Can I see the hands of those who are family members of veterans? Thank you very much. Without you, it would be a cold homecoming. Thank you. As we conclude, Kennedy Rush, Xavier University student, will sing America the Beautiful. Kennedy.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream, I'm so sorry. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that left behind the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you.